Pennhurst Asylum had always been a place of dark fascination for me. Its history was infamous. Stories of abuse, neglect, and inhumane treatment of patients had cemented it as one of Pennsylvania's most haunted locations. I had seen it on TV shows and read about it online. But nothing prepared me for standing in front of the place in person. Its rotting walls seemed to stare down at us, daring us to step inside. I never thought I'd go along with something like this. But when my friends suggested we check it out for fun, I couldn't resist the pull of morbid curiosity. It was a cold autumn night when we arrived. The kind of night where the wind cuts through your clothes and the darkness feels heavier than usual. We parked the car on the edge of the grounds, and as soon as I stepped out, I felt it, the overwhelming sense of wrongness, like the air itself was saturated with memories of pain and fear. "This place is gonna be sick," Mark said, excited. "We'll get some crazy footage." I wasn't as confident. The others, Josh, Jess, and Mark, seemed eager, but there was an unease deep in my gut that I couldn't shake. I was the only one who had spent days researching the asylum. I knew more than just the rumors of it being haunted. I knew about the real horrors that had taken place here. Patients locked in solitary for days, left to starve. Children subjected to cruel treatments. Others who disappeared entirely. That kind of suffering doesn't just go away when a building is abandoned. It lingers, festering. We approached the entrance together, our flashlights barely penetrating the thick darkness. The doors were still intact but ajar, hanging limply from rusted hinges. Josh, who had always been the boldest of the group, pushed one open with a loud creak. "You sure about this?" I asked, my voice barely above a whisper. He laughed, though there was an edge to it. "Come on, you're not getting cold feet now, are you?" I shook my head, but the unease only grew stronger as we stepped inside. The air was damp and thick with the smell of mold and decay. The sound of our footsteps echoed through the long, empty corridors, each one lined with rooms that had been left to rot. Graffiti and vandalism covered the walls, but beneath that, you could still see the remnants of what this place had been. Old hospital beds lay rusting in the corners. Shattered glass from broken windows crunched beneath our feet, and remnants of medical equipment were scattered around like forgotten toys. "Let's split up," Mark suggested as we reached a fork in the hallway. "We can cover more ground that way. Jess and I will head west. You guys check out the east wing. We'll meet back here in an hour." I wasn't keen on the idea, but no one else objected. I exchanged a glance with Josh, and we headed down the east corridor. As we walked deeper into the building, the sounds from Jess and Mark's voices quickly faded, leaving us in an oppressive silence. Josh was holding one of the EMF detectors we had brought along, but so far, it hadn't picked up anything. I tried to focus on our surroundings, taking in the details of the asylum as we passed through. Each door we walked by led into small, cramped rooms, some with old hospital beds still intact, others with only bare, cold floors. The windows were shattered, the plaster peeling from the walls, exposing rusted pipes and crumbling brick. "You ever wonder what it must have been like?" Josh asked, breaking the silence. "Living here, I mean." I didn't want to think about it, but the images came unbidden. "I don't think any of us can imagine," I said. "This place was hell for a lot of people." We came to a larger room at the end of the hallway. A day room, perhaps, judging by the wide space and the large windows overlooking the overgrown courtyard outside. The wind had picked up, causing the broken glass in the window frames to rattle, and for a moment, I thought I heard voices carried on the breeze. Dismissing it as my imagination, I turned my attention back to Josh, who was fiddling with the EMF detector. Suddenly, the detector's lights blinked to life, spiking from green to red. Josh froze, his face lit by the eerie glow. "You seeing this?" I stepped closer, the hairs on my neck standing on end. "There's no electricity here, right?" "Right," he whispered, his eyes wide. "That's what I thought." Before we could say anything else, a low, drawn-out groan echoed from the far corner of the room. It was distant, but unmistakably there. We both turned towards the sound, our flashlights shaking as we aimed them at the source. Nothing. Just an empty corner with crumbling plaster and debris. "That had to be the wind," I said, more to reassure myself than Josh. But even as I said it, I knew the wind couldn't have made that sound. It was too human, too filled with anguish. Josh looked at me, his expression unreadable. "Let's get out of here." We backed out of the day room and hurried back into the hallway. But as soon as we stepped into the corridor, the air felt different, colder. It was the kind of cold that didn't just chill your skin, but seemed to settle deep in your bones. Then, we heard it again. The groan, only this time it was louder, closer. Josh stopped in his tracks, clutching the EMF detector as it spiked wildly. The groan transformed into a whisper, unintelligible at first, but growing clearer by the second. It was coming from the walls, as if the very building itself was speaking to us. "Do you hear that?" I asked, my voice barely audible. Josh nodded, his face pale. "What the hell are they saying?" I strained to listen, trying to make sense of the whispers, but they were layered, overlapping, and just as I was about to give up, I heard it, one clear word cutting through the chaos. "Run." My blood ran cold. I grabbed Josh's arm. "We need to leave, now." But before we could move, something slammed the door at the end of the hallway, the force shaking the walls. We both jumped, our flashlights casting frantic beams of light around the corridor. And then, like a sudden, unexpected blast of winter wind, an ear-piercing, agonized scream reverberated off the walls of the corridor. The walls shook. Dust and debris from the crumbling plaster ceiling rained down around us. I nearly dropped my flashlight as I reacted, covering my ears to dampen the screams. But it was no use. That scream was like the anguish of the 100 tortured souls that met their end behind these very walls, and it resonated through my body like a shockwave. Then, as quickly as it began, the screaming stopped. An eerie silence fell over the corridor. The only sound was the heavy breathing from me and Josh as we tried to regain our composure. Then, the groaning started up again, accompanied by the soft whispers of shuffling feet. It was coming from behind us. Josh and I turned back in the direction of the day room and aimed our flashlights down the hallway. There was nothing there, but we could hear it. Low at first, but then growing steadily louder as it made its way down the hall to meet us. Josh grabbed my wrist. "Come on." We ran, our footsteps echoing down the narrow hall. But no matter how fast we moved, it felt like something was right behind us. The groaning, the whispers, they followed, growing louder with every step. The only thought in my mind was to get out of that place before whatever was following us caught up. When we finally reached the entrance, we slammed through the doors and burst into the cool night air, gasping for breath. Jess and Mark were already outside, pale and shaken. "What happened to you guys?" Jess asked, her voice trembling. "We heard something, but when we tried to leave, the door wouldn't open. It was like it was holding us inside." I didn't have the energy to explain. We all knew something was wrong with that place, something far beyond what any of us had imagined. We piled into the car and sped away, none of us speaking for the entire ride back. It's been weeks now, but I still can't shake the feeling that we left something behind that night. That something followed us home. Something that latched onto us, onto me. Sometimes, late at night, when everything is quiet, I hear it again, the whispers, faint, but unmistakable. They're in the walls, and I'm terrified. They'll never stop.